Oh, we are live. It says we are live. Yay. Okay. Hello, humans. I'm Dr. Sarah Happinen with Performance is Happening, and we help humans live happier, healthier lives by applying performance science to wellness, leadership, and neurodivergent brains at work. I'm so excited for today's speaker spotlight conversation as we get ready for the Art and Science of Health Promotion Conference going down here in Colorado Springs at the end of the month. And you can still get your tickets. They are going to be, I'm going to add a link to the Wellness Alliance, and you can go ahead and click and get your tickets and join Jocelyn and myself at the Broadmoor later this month. Okay, so today I'm joined by Jocelyn Pepe. Oh, I love her last name. Did I say it right?
You did.
It's so cute. Okay. She's founder of True You, author of Claim Your Brain, and a keynote speaker whose work sits right at the intersection of neuroscience and soul. Jocelyn brings a powerful blend of science, lived experience, and deep compassion to the mental health conversation. With a master's degree in the psychology and neuroscience of mental health, global coaching experience, and her own journey through burnout and traumatic brain injury. I have TBI too. We can talk about that after. Also, I didn't mention that Jocelyn is one of the keynote speakers. So keep tuning into this conversation. Okay, sorry, focus. She challenges us to rethink how we approach well-being at work and in life. Her keynote, Claim Your Brain, the Science of Soul and Mental Health, explores how understanding the brain and nervous system can transform the way we lead, recover, and perform. She introduces a 5-element framework that integrates social, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being in a way that is both evidence-based and deeply human. Jocelyn, I'm so excited to have you here. I know that we can talk about a lot of stuff. There's so much overlap in our work, so I'm super pumped. But let's get started. When you say claim your brain, what does that really mean in today's world?
Oh, yes, that's such a great question. If we don't claim our brain, the world is going to claim it for us. And especially in today's world with a constant barrage of technology, news, global suffering, it can all penetrate us. So when we talk about claim your brain, it's not just your brain that we're claiming. It's your brain, it's your nervous system, it's your whole self, because all of us from a neuroscience perspective can feel the impact that any type of life experience is having. So whether we're in a family or a parent raising children or we're in the workplace, we need to claim our brain, because if we don't care for our brains, our nervous systems, they go into protection mode. And then we're not operating from our highest capacity and cognitive performance in the workplace specifically.
Yeah, I agree. And so many of us don't realize, and I include myself in that as, is a lot of our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors are just on autopilot, right? Like they say 95% is copy and pasted from yesterday. And I know, and my audience knows, like our brain does not want success for us. Our brain wants to keep us alive and keep us safe. And by doing that, all it does is repeat behaviors that has kept us alive and kept us safe, right? So if we want success, often that means we have to do something scary. We have to get out of our comfort zone. We need to make a change. And our brain doesn't want to make a change because a change is scary, and doing what we've always done is safe.
Exactly.
And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know that in your book, because I was also binging some other stuff that you did this morning. So she also has out there on the Wellness Alliance a pre-conference webinar that was done in December.
Yeah, in December.
Yeah. So I was binging that this morning as well. So with your 5 different, your framework that integrates social, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. When you're tackling this, like claim your brain, and we know that our brain doesn't want success for us, we have to work extra hard. Where would you suggest someone starts?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So in the way that the model is used and kind of drawn, if you will, is it's created with our social well-being in the middle. So our social well-being is the first place to start. That's our relationship with yourself. It builds upon what you were just saying, because our brains are programmed to keep us safe. Our brains are programmed from multiple levels of conditioning. So whether it's adverse experiences in childhood or adverse life experiences, we start to accumulate a narrative that forms who we are. And the beautiful thing is we get to change that. So if our narrative, for example, is negative, not enough, the constant not enough, not smart enough, not doing enough, the not enough train, or seeing things in a negative perspective, we get the opportunity to retrain our relationship with ourselves. So social well-being is the most important aspect of starting with the way that I speak about mental health and with the way that the model has been created, because our relationship with ourself then informs our relationship with everybody else around us. And so whether that's who we're attracting or how we're relating. So the inter and intrapersonal relationship is such an imperative place to be beginning, because the starting point is from within, then ripples out to create the life that we have, who we attract into our lives, the type of relationships we have personally and professionally, and how healthy those are for us, because we know that social well-being is one of the key components and drivers of positive mental health.
Self-determination theory. It's the relatedness or belonging piece from Desi and Ryan. I've written a lot of work on that. I love that. And I love how you started with social and then showed that, yes, it's the related piece, right? The community who you surround yourself with, and also self. And I had this conversation with someone online. Was it on a podcast? I filmed a podcast yesterday. I did have this conversation. I can't remember who it was with, but the importance of putting yourself first. So because I work with a lot of females, regardless of ADHD or neurodivergent, what happens is females, because they're females, tend to be mothers, right? And because I've done a lot of work in school districts and healthcare settings, I tend to have like teachers and nurses. And I'm generalizing, but these people tend to care about others so much, whether it's their children or their patients or their students. And it's so easy to say, right? Like, put yourself first, engage in positive self-talk. But that social component also is prioritizing yourself. So do you have any advice for the women and or men, because men can care about others, and I'm not using that as, but just the humans that I work with really tend to prioritize everybody else's needs over their own. So do you have any advice for those women of like the first step to kind of what I call like flipping the triangle of put yourself at the top, and then everything is going to trickle down and your life will be easier. Your relationships will be easier. You'll have more energy. Everything in your life is going to improve if you put yourself first.
It's interesting because I was having this conversation this morning for International Women's Day and Women's Brain Health. And it's Brain Health Month even right now in March. And so this conversation we're having about putting yourself first, the place I recommend is starting with the narrative, starting with how we're speaking to ourselves, because once we start to shift that narrative and the importance of nurturing our minds, we can then nurture others from a greater place. And yes, we can say, put your oxygen mask on first or carve out time, but to do those things takes a very different way of being than being in a default mode of putting everybody else first, putting the children first, the career first, the family first. So when we start to shift the narrative of I should, or the guilt narrative, so some of that energetic piece that comes from the feelings, which, the body up versus the brain down, when we start to pay a little bit more attention of where our choices and decisions are coming from. When you were talking earlier about like claim your brain and being more conscious of our feelings and our thoughts, is just taking a slow minute to pause and ask our body what we need, where the energy is coming from, whether it's an emotional energy within our bodies, and what that actually, how it's helping or hindering us. So the emotion or the feeling of doing something because we should, or from guilt, if that's what we're driving, is that how we would want, our children or our best friend or somebody else, how we would want them behaving and acting in life? So it's really tapping into more of the narrative of where our actions and behaviors coming from, and taking a 30-second pause in our day to slow down and ask. And we all have enough time to take 30 seconds to a minute just to pause and check in with where we're at and what we need. And when we start with that type of small micro behavior, we can build on that. And that's the important piece, is the building part.
Yeah. And I heard a few things for the audience is micro, right? 30 seconds counts.
Yes.
1 second is better than 0 seconds. Like, I'm going to go off on a tangent just for a sec. For 8 years, I did a program called Move at Work Challenge. That was 5 to 7 minutes of movement that you do at your place of work. And it was featured at the National Institute of Health. But people were surprised, like, how you could change your brain and body or your state in 5 minutes. And I'm like, 5 minutes is a long time, even in 1 minute, or as you said, 30 seconds. Right? So I heard that, and I want the audience to hear like 30 seconds. Yes. Also, I heard from that is intuition, right? Your body knows deeply, whether your conscious mind knows or not, like what you need, what you desire, what, like when they say go with your intuition or go with your gut, like that's a real thing. And I know for some people it sounds really woo-woo, but I know that you know this. There's a lot of science out there. Like, we have intuition, and it tends to be higher in neurodivergent humans, but listen to what your body is telling you, because you know.
Yeah. And in modern life, this is the challenge. And I do write about this. It's when you blow past your intuition and you mentally push through, this is where poor mental health happens. So this is where burnout happens. This is where anxiety happens. This is where depression happens, when we push through what our body's innate system is telling us and we ignore it. But when we take that 30 seconds, micro moments of consciousness with our body and just checking in, we can listen. And then we also have to find the courage to listen and then choose the action aligned with that intuition. And sometimes that can be the tricky part. So I don't want it to be like, listen to your intuition and do the thing, but it's like, start to listen to your intuition on like small decisions. And then that also becomes a build of growing and listening to your intuition. So you can decipher what is a mental push versus a soulful pull versus a fearful action.
Yeah. And I love how also you said, because I talk about this a lot too, training your brain. And I always say it's like training a muscle. Like, I don't do one bicep curl and I'm ripped. Like, I've done thousands, if not 1 million over my life to get the muscles that I have. And like you said, like, start small, start reflecting on small things that maybe don't matter. Maybe they matter a little bit, but then it's going to be easier. Your brain has basically done the reps so that when it's something that's a little more, there's higher stakes, higher costs. Maybe it's something at work. Maybe you said something really great, which weaves into my next question very well, but like pushing through, getting yourself into burnout, especially with neurodivergent humans, because we tend to be high masking, right? And you can do it until you cannot. And then that recovery is just going to be absolutely ridiculous versus catching yourself in that moment. Is this decision or action, or whenever you stopped and use the term like pause, when you're reflecting, like, is this moving me towards what I want or farther away? And I think I always call that like a timeline split of what's going on here. And I think for us humans to realize, like, often we have more control over ourselves and our thoughts and our behaviors and our actions in our life than we think, if we can just get out of that autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my next question. But before I do that, I just want to offer this. You can steal it from me. I stole it from someone. I don't know who I stole it from, but I use it all the time and it makes people laugh. Shooting all over yourself. That's my favorite. I wanted to say it earlier, but then I forgot. But
well, it's this, how we speak to ourselves matters. That's why this is the first thing that I offered as a tool, was how we speak to ourselves. Our cells are listening. How we speak to ourselves, we're just deeply grooving the neuroplasticity in our brains and our bodies. How we speak to ourselves is so important, and it can be a differentiator in good mental health or poor mental health. So no more shoulding. I am, I will, I want to, or not at all.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. This perfect transition to this next question.
Okay.
So you talk about chronic stress and its impact on neuroplasticity. For high performers who pride themselves on pushing through, what is happening in the brain when burnout becomes the norm?
Yes. So when we push, high performers push anybody, when anybody pushes themselves past the point of their brain capacity and consistently blow by it, saying, I'll just grind it out, I'll do more, just a few more hours, these 12-hour days, it's all good, I'll sleep on the weekend. Your brain, it's like your brain is keeping score. And when we push past our capacity, and this is where my brain injury has been an actual gift, because when I was a high functioning human, I could just push past. I could push past a lot of stuff, but now I can't push past much of anything at all, because my brain is so much more tuned into capacity, and we cannot push past. And so what's happening in our brain is, the more we push past, the more we go into more of the primal parts of our brain. So we start to move from being able to operate at a high cognitive capacity in our prefrontal cortex and areas of executive function, and our brain starts to conserve energy, because what it actually has to do is like pump our heart and help us breathe. So our brain is literally shutting down. And so if we're experiencing burnout, I did a lot of research on neuroinflammation in my master's. And so when we are going into a state of overcapacity, we're moving away from being able to operate at a high performance, high cognitive function, high executive function, and going more into our limbic system, which is really more it's built for, our brain is protecting us. It's keeping us safe. So it's keeping your body alive versus allowing you to be in the more higher cognitive functions of being a human being. We go into energy conservation mode. And there's good news with this. We can recover because we are so resilient and due to neuroplasticity, and it takes time and removals of the stimuluses that we were, pushing ourselves through that got us in the place that we did.
Yeah. I'm curious to kind of dive in a little more with TBIs, because I was diagnosed when I got my brain scanned for ADHD. I had TBI in all lobes of my brain, and I've had, because of my sport, and now I'm reflecting back of my neurodivergence of a child, like sensation seeking, all these things. Like, I knocked my teeth out when I was 2 trying to build a bridge out of books. I grew up in Canada, like yourself. I got hit in the head with a hockey stick. We used to go on those little scooter things with wheels, and I like smashed my head into a brick wall. All these, I had multiple concussions before the age of 10. And then through diving, they've now think that I've had upwards of 15 concussions. And once you have a concussion, it's easier to get a concussion. And from my understanding, because also of my ADHD brain, it really worked in my favor because I create new pathways. But can you dive a little bit into what neuroplasticity is for the humans that don't necessarily know. And then as much as you want to share about your TBI and how you can help your body, help your brain kind of heal from that a little bit.
Yeah. So neuroplasticity is our brain's ability to heal and rewire itself when we can grow new neurons, new pathways. So that's what's happening in our brain. It's a regenerative process. And that also happens in our peripheral nervous system. So it's happening in our central and our peripheral nervous system. We get to reprogram ourselves when we're conscious about the choice and when we give it the right conditions. So just like a broken wrist can heal, like a bone can heal in a cast, our brains can heal to a certain extent when we're giving it the right conditions. So my traumatic brain injury, I was training for a triathlon and I went headfirst into the side of the road, totally unconscious. And there was no support. So that's part of the book too, is not just for mental health and depression and anxiety and burnout, but a brain injury and how I had to recover from that. So those 5 elements of well-being and providing your body the right conditions for it to heal, like feeding and nourishing your brain with whole foods, the Mediterranean style of eating, or high healthy fats, avocados and walnuts and blueberries and antioxidants, and all the types of foods for your brain are super important for nourishment and recovery. Alcohol, I cut out. It's a neurotoxin. I wasn't healing from my brain injury. And I haven't done a huge deep dive in TBI. And what I have learned is that women experience it differently due to the highly tuned nature of our brain and the immune response in our brain. So there's a difference in that aspect of it. But the nourishment from a food, from a sleep perspective, from following our biological rhythms, because I'm also starting to learn that for women, our hormonal cycles and time in that cycle when we hit our head can have an impact on us in our recovery process. And then it's being consistent with the movement piece, because the brain needs blood flow and oxygen. And so typically there's some type of jarring experience in the body when the brain goes through a concussion. So whether it's happening in the neck or with the brain hitting the side of the skull, there's something happening in there. But it's important to consistently be getting our heart rate up so we get the blood flow and the oxygen into the brain. And then just managing and watching the mental and emotional aspects of it, because with a head injury, the research is clear and evident that there is a shift in mood, and that can really impact folks. And so if we're not paying attention to that aspect of it, it could be quite derailing. But when we do pay attention to it, we can be a little bit more conscious about what's coming up for us in the emotional experiences or the energies that we're feeling. So for example, anger was something that started to come up for me. And it was something I'd never associated with before. But then the spiritual perspective too, like having a bigger picture. For me, I've turned this, brain injury into a purpose and really started to focus and shift from mental health into brain health. And how can I support the advancement of a very underfunded, very understudied discipline in women's health?
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I want to also mention that like neuroplasticity doesn't have an age.
Yeah.
At any age you can learn new skills, create new wiring, create new thought patterns. Any age, folks, any age. Often you'll hear people on the interwebs of like, I'm too old. No, you aren't. You're never too old. I taught an 83-year-old head balance on a ball, so you're never too old. Sorry, that's an excuse.
Yes, exactly. And that's super promising. Like, go out and learn a new skill, try something different. And it has to be something unique. I've heard some neurologists talking about this. If for folks who are going to do Sudoku, your brain just gets used to doing Sudoku. So it's not like the new quiz, the new test is going to be like really brain challenging, but you got to go do something different. So once your brain has mastered that, it's worked with its neuroplasticity, go, I don't know, learn how to ride a unicycle.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say the quickest way that I can see it and see neurons firing, asking and this tends to be males just because they don't skip as much as females, but I've seen the same struggle in females too. Asking a group of people to skip backwards.
Oh.
And when it starts, they're like, they can't get it. And then something clicks, and all of a sudden, like, it looks like they've been doing it for years. But it is hilarious from my perspective of the coach, especially in a big group of people, to just watch at the beginning. It's like all of a sudden it connects and then they got it. But it's very entertaining for me to watch it happen. But you can see it happen in real life, which is awesome. Seeing brain training happen.
Yes.
Okay, if a wellness leader or an HR executive is listening, what is one thing they are likely underestimating about the brain and nervous system in the workplace, in the workforce, at work?
Yes. So this is huge in an era where McKinsey just came out with a huge report on brain health and the economic opportunity we have in investing in human beings in the workplace. AI, yes, we have AI, but that's not our greatest concern. Our greatest concern is how we can use the untapped brain potential, support better mental health across the countries, across the globe, across cultures, in order to decrease, the years of life that are lost in poor mental health and increase the brain capacity of human beings. And so from a cognitive performance perspective, the folks that are left in organizations after layoffs, after leaves of absence, or time, disability time, the folks that are left after the AI cuts, those folks need to be nurtured well in order to cognitively perform. And there are really important economic indicators that talk about how important it is to be caring for the humans and the brains inside the workplace, because this is what people want purpose. So first of all, when we give people purpose in the workplace, they're fueled and fulfilled, and meeting some type of spiritual well-being, purpose, values, alignment, living into a vision. But also the cognitive performance and cognitive capacity in the workplace is a huge untapped potential. And then from that, when we were talking about what happens to the brain and burnout, if we're not paying attention to the brain and the nervous system in the workplace, we're going to have a whole workforce operating from their more primal parts, where we have everybody with the potential to be operating to their capacity that really works for them. And if we're not decreasing folks' capacity when all those types of changes are happening, whether they're disability, time off, or layoffs, or restructures, if we're not paying attention to the human beings and their nervous systems and their brains, it is having an absolutely detrimental effect on the people and the business.
Yeah. We're humans. We're not machines.
Yes. And mental health is not just brain, nervous system. It's your gut, it's your heart. Like when we think about humans, we have a heart, we have emotions, we have empathy, we have compassion. We have a real ability to care and support one another. And that is the untapped potential.
Yeah. And I think you and I and people who do what we do, like, we realize it. I'm having a lot of discussions with my husband, and I have some tech clients and all that are worried because their jobs could be taken away by AI. Yeah. And that's where I'm like, well, look at it from a human perspective. Like, yes, AI can do your job. What can you do as a human? Like, no one's ever going to, AI can't take my job, so I'm not worried about that. But for people, I think going back to the humanism is really important. And I think AI is a great tool. I personally don't believe it's going to do all the things that they say it's going to do. Already by now, it should almost be integrated into, I know that, like, I saw a stat, it's like 90% of new organizations who have tried to implement AI in a way have failed. So we're not there yet. I think we still have some time. But what I hear from there is like the humanism. And then I have 2 more questions for you, because I know we're running out of time. You said basically when we were talking about humanism, to find your value and your joy of doing the work that you do. So can you share a little bit, what is the reason that you do the work that you do?
Thank you. Mental health is more than my profession. It is a deep purpose of mine. From life experiences and being around folks who couldn't navigate their own mental health, and my own internalization of those behaviors as a woman, and over responsibilities, I did the work I was doing from the depression and anxiety perspective, because it's not a me. Mental health is not a me situation. It's a we. We get in poor mental health together. So it's really important for me that more folks have the tools and the skills to take care of their mental health. So we're not projecting our poor mental health on everybody else, and that anybody else who is out there has some skills and tools to recognize that what's theirs and what's not theirs to be carrying. And so my purpose is really to improve quality of life of humanity and support that's like the biggest overarching purpose, is to improve the quality of life of humanity, because we have the opportunity to create a really fulfilling life. And I really believe that if we have the ability to make these choices, to be resilient, to work through very difficult situations, to work through different traumas or experiences in life, and still make the best of why we're all here. So my purpose is really that: improve the quality of life of humanity from a mental health and brain health perspective.
I love that. And you're doing such important work. And I think by sharing your story and your journey, people can see that like it's doable and you have a structure. And I think that's important, regardless of, I work with a lot of neurodivergence and we need structure. We hate it, but we need it. But I think if you're recovering from TBI or depression or anxiety of all these things, know that you have control over your brain. And it is, like I said, like training a muscle. You can't just do something once and expect it to be fixed, right? It is, you can think of your brain like your physique. If you want a nice physique, you have to show up every day and eat well, move your body, lift heavy things, put them down, lift them up again. So I think it's awesome that you're providing a more holistic perspective on what it looks like to take charge of your brain. Claim your brain. Okay.
Claim your brain.
That was amazing. I have one more question. And
Yeah.
then we can wrap up. When you think about the humans that are going to be sitting in your keynote, what do you hope they feel or learn when they leave the room?
What I hope they feel is a deeper connection to themselves. What I hope they take away is a perspective on mental health that's whole person, that's not one modality or one way. This is a whole person approach to taking care of our mind and our brain. And when I think about the future of health, of medicine, even listening to neurologists in conferences, everything is super integrated. And so it's not, I take care of my brain or I take care of my heart. It's, I take care of my brain and then I take care of my whole body in that process, or I take care of my gut and then I take care of my brain. So it's a whole person integrated approach. And I would love folks to be walking away with that perspective and that opportunity to share more widely.
I love that. You're preaching to the choir, but it's never one thing. I always joke, I usually go 12 weeks with someone when they start like one-on-one coaching. And at the end, I was like, what was the one thing that fixed everything? And you can just see their face go, huh? And I'm like, oh, that was a trick question. Because it's all these things, right? Yeah. It's never just one thing. And then what tends to happen as humans is like, we're doing all the things and then we feel good. So then we stop doing some of the things. And it happens slowly that you slide back into that previous behavior. And so I always encourage people to like, when you're feeling good, it's usually because you're doing a whole bunch of different things. It's never just exercising or eating well or taking your supplements, or it's everything all the time. So
yes, and it's lifestyle medicine. How you live now impacts and influences how you're going to live later. This is a lifestyle. So when we start to integrate those micro moments, we start to shift our lifestyle.
Yeah. Micro moments coming up again. Every little bit counts, folks. Okay. Well, it was such a pleasure to speak with you. And I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks at the Broadmoor. And you guys listening, you can still get tickets. You can still purchase tickets from the Wellness Alliance to join us to hear Jocelyn speak at her keynote. And I will be presenting on Thursday at 2:05 for Thriving on Neurodivergence in the Workplace.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. We will see you in Colorado Springs.
See you soon.